Really like the reading that was just made. The book of James is like a divine commentary on the Sermon on the Mount, which is found in Matthew chapters 5 through chapter 7. The sermon this morning is actually dealing with Matthew chapter 5, looking at verses 21 through 26, okay? And James, like I said, is like a divine commentary on that. The way I'd like to introduce the idea of verses 21 through 26 is by describing a situation to you this morning. There was, for many years, I don't know how many years he served in that capacity, but over at Monroe County, for the most part, while I was preaching up there in Monroe County, Phil Bartley was the principal of the high school. Now, Phil was in ways kind of a high-strung sort of fellow, and in other ways he was just a regular old guy. He liked to unwind by going out with his hunting dogs and things like that, and going out on a boat on the lake and so on and so forth. But Phil got kind of frustrated later on in his tenure as principal, and he made no bones about it at all. So he'd come into church and he'd be like, "Man, I wish they had never invented that Facebook." Well, what was he fussing about? He was fussing about where the kids would get on Facebook. Back then, actually, they would get on Facebook. I think they more Twitter or Instagram or stuff like that now. But anyway, back then they get on Facebook some more. And then they'd come to school and they would argue about what they had just posted last night on Facebook. And they'd get into fights. And he said, it's not because of anything going on at school, you see. It's what they were doing away from school that they get into arguments about because they were using the social media. Words resulted in problems over at the school. People have probably said words can create even wars, right? You use words in the wrong way. Words are the expressions of the violence inside the heart. That happens a long time before you get to actual physical violence. Now, that was a real-world illustration, and I'd like to kind of describe it by talking about the problem this way. All right, so those children were in their homes, at house. And in the house, they're typing away and they say something to somebody else. Okay, well, let's use this and see if it makes any sense, all right? Now, I'm real close to the other Tim right now. We're pretty close, aren't we? It's right here. Now, back up, okay. I preached that there's only one Tim in the church that's worth a hill of beans. And he said amen. Boy, that got it started right there, didn't it? Because you was talking about a different Tim, wouldn't you? See? Now, I ought not to have done that. You see what I got started, and then his word come right back, and then you see what he fed into and all that, so it gets bad. Now, I ought not to say that just right across from a man. I ought not to do such a thing. But guess what? What if I go over here? Well, can I say it now? Because, at least I'm far enough away where I can start running quick. Can I say it now? Somebody says, "Oh, no, you can't say that. You ought not to say it just because you're far enough away to run from him." All right, well, now I'm over here. Can I say it now? Now I got a time where I don't have to run hardly as fast. It doesn't matter if somebody says how quick you can run from him. You ought not to set it to start with. You see, that's the point, isn't it? You can have somebody halfway across the world, and you can destroy your influence for Jesus Christ on that person, and you can destroy a possible friendship, and you can keep that person from having good thoughts themselves by virtue of what you said. And time and distance make no difference to it, do they? It doesn't make any difference. You see, that's what people don't understand. They act like they're anonymous or something, and they'll just say all kinds of bad things about people and to people, and they don't understand that distance meant nothing with God. The words were just as mean. The hate and the violence inside the heart was just as real. Why would I ever said anything like that anyway? About there's only one Tim in church worth anything. Well, it must have been because I had some kind of thought of anger enter into my mind, you see. That's why I would have said such a thing. Now, I would never preach such a thing, of course, and don't even think such a thing. But why would I ever do that? Words come from the intent of the heart. When Jesus was talking about what people thought in the Old Testament days, He was saying God is building you up to think more spiritually. God wants you to understand where your violence comes from. Where does your hate come from? How does it express itself? It comes from in here, doesn't it? And it expresses itself in words. And the words lead to actions far too many times. Jesus said, if you will nip it in the bud, if you'll deal with what's going on in here, you won't have to worry about what's coming out of here and what you do day to day, because you won't be going around hating people. Now let's think about that as we go into Matthew chapter 5 and looking at verses 21 through 26. You have heard that it was said by them of old time, you shall not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you, see how Jesus makes a contrast there? They had heard this, but I say unto you, whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. This first section, Jesus clearly shows that the matter is not something that started in the courts or with the council. The matter is not something you want to take to the judgment. Now, the Jews may have been thinking of physical judgment, like a court or something, or the punishment laid down by an officer. Jesus said, I want you to think about spiritually the judgment. I want you to think about God's judgment on somebody that expresses hate. And then He expands on what He's talking about. He starts drawing some conclusions. Therefore, now think about how this would apply to people in a worship setting. Therefore, if you bring your gift to the altar, now this is like somebody coming to worship. Back then they would have a sacrificial altar and they bring their gift to it. If you bring your gift to the altar and there remember that your brother has aught against you, leave there your gift before the altar. Go your way. First, be reconciled to your brother. Then come and offer your gift. In this section of Scripture, Jesus points out that your personal relationships, the condition of your heart on whether you love people or hate people, reflects on your ability to worship God in spirit and in truth. He says it is not acceptable for somebody to act like, well, I'm going to come to church, but I hate people, and I want to express that hate. Jesus said, you got to deal with that, because maybe you have expressed it in the past, and then you bring that into the assembly of God, and you act like, I'm going to get benefit out of worshiping God, and all the while you know that you've got a feud going on down here. You're a Hatfield, and they're a McCoy, and there's been a problem there, and you've got to resolve that. You've got to do everything in your power. You can't force somebody to say, I forgive you, but you can try. And if you don't make the attempt, then the gift you brought to the altar, the worship you brought before God, is not acceptable, God says. It's not going to cut it. Well, somebody says, how would that apply to other situations? Can you get in trouble in life because of your anger, because of the way you express yourself? Jesus says, oh yes, most definitely. Agree with your adversary quickly while you're in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary deliver thee to the judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and you be cast into prison. Verily I say unto you, you will by no means come out of there until you have paid the last penny. There was a guy one time, whose name was Tim, got in trouble on a medical bill. So this particular Tim thought that the way you deal if you have a bunch of medical bills come in at one time, that if you would start paying the oldest one first, you know, and then take it from there. Well, this particular Tim found out it doesn't work that way. You see, what happens is that if you start paying the old one, one of the newer ones has a tendency to think, he's not going to pay at all. And the next thing you know, you get a little letter from a lawyer or something like that. And they say, look, you didn't pay no attention to this, and we're going to do some bad things to you. Well, what did this Tim decide he was going to do? Well, what I did is I go down, and I knew where the guy's office was. And I went over there to him. And I told that guy, some office over in Columbia, Tennessee or something, it was years ago, I said, look, I got this thing here. This bill was for, I think it was about $300 or something like that. I got a bill here. And they're wanting their money. Now, you got to understand, if I'd had all the money up front to start with to be able to give to you all, then we wouldn't even be standing here, but that's not the way it is with me. I made an agreement with him quickly. They had given him power in that attorney's office for them to settle the situation. And so he said, if you'll just give me X amount right now, then, I'll just sign off on this. It's done. And so I agreed quickly with him, and the matter was over. It never had to develop. So nothing came from it other than a little letter, right? Which everybody could have saved their time on if they had had patience, but regardless, it got resolved right there. Now, what if I had decided, well, no, I'm not going to, play that game. We're not going to do that. Then I'm taking my chances, because when I get there before that judge, maybe he's going to say, look, it was within your power. You should have done this. Now you owe that, plus court costs, plus this, plus the other. I could have been in bad trouble, couldn't I? Agree with your adversary quickly while you're in the way with him. Because once he signed off on that and said everything's taken care of, no more worries, right? I didn't have to think of it again, and I didn't. Don't have to worry about it after that. I came to an agreement quickly. If you have a problem with somebody, Jesus says you deal with it, and you deal with it before you think you can go on with your worship life. You deal with it before you realize that I'm going to accomplish this, that, and the other in life. You're not going to sleep good. You're not going to have a good time in life. Agree with your adversary quickly. Come to an agreement. Whatever it is, swallow your pride, man. But people get all angry. They get worked up, and they can't do that. Why? Jesus says people were looking on the surface of it when they should have been looking inside the heart. Now let's deal with the Bible of it, and then I'll go back to people's lives, okay? The Bible aspect of this is actually pretty clear. How many times does it say in Scripture, thou shalt not kill? Over and over, doesn't it? Now we know that when the Bible says thou shalt not kill, Jesus is talking about murder. Because there are many incidences in the Bible where it talks about things being killed. Thou shalt not kill. Well, can I kill plant life? Well, if you don't want to starve, you'd better. Can I kill animal life? Well, nobody except for maybe the most strict and ornery vegans would say that you cannot. They might not want to go for it themselves, but most of them would say if you want to, that you could. And nobody that I know of says that when Jesus said, or when any of the Old Testament prophets said, or when Moses said, thou shalt not kill, that he meant animals. He was talking about people, wasn't he? So we've already qualified the statement a couple of times. Thou shalt not kill. Well, is he talking about if you defend yourself? Well, no, people don't normally apply it to that. And in fact, that's not what he was talking about. Matthew chapter 24, verse 43. Know this, if the master of the house had not known what hour the thief would come, if he had known it, that is, he did know when he was coming, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Exactly how are you not going to allow it if you can't defend yourself? You see, there's a principle involved, isn't there? Jesus implied in this passage what everybody agrees to, that you can defend yourself. You're under no particular obligation to defend yourself. You don't read, as we were studying in our Bible study with many out here in the auditorium, the time when Peter and John got beaten for preaching about Jesus Christ in the book of Acts. It doesn't read that there was a big rumble there and they were in fisticuffs with those fellas. They simply took the beating. So you don't have to defend yourself, but you have the right to defend yourself if you so choose. And the Bible preaches that that's okay. Is it okay for society to defend itself? Yep. Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 9. Now notice, Deuteronomy 5, verse 17 said, you shall not murder. And then Deuteronomy 13, verse 9, same law, same book, says just later on in chapter 13, verse 9, you shall surely kill him. You shall not kill, you shall surely kill him. Who? Your hand shall be first against him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all the people. It's talking about a case of capital punishment. So the law has the right to take a life. Whosoever sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. That's in the book of Genesis, Genesis 9:6, I believe. Furthermore, you have the statement of Scripture that thou shalt not kill is translated in these various passages in other places as you shall do no murder. So obviously that's what he meant. It's back and forth. The Bible does not encourage vigilantism, but the Bible does say the state does not bear the sword in vain, Romans 13. It has the right to execute. So there's all kinds of qualifications of not to physically harm somebody or to hurt them. Having said that, why would anybody need to be executed? Most often it's because they themselves hurt somebody. They themselves did something that is worthy of death. They were a violent person. Jesus said, where does that come from? Where does it come from? That's what in the New Testament we're getting to the root of. Where is your anger coming from? Ephesians 4, verse 26. Be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. Come to a resolution of your problems, and at the same time your anger needs to be directed in the right way. It's anger at sin. You can have a righteous indignation, folks, but don't let hate overtake you in your relationships. The Bible says that Jesus, when He was reviled, reviled not again, but committed himself to the one who judges righteously. God will take care of this. My Father is all righteous, and He knows what's just going on, and there's no use in me arguing with you about this, and I'm not going to do it. We have two problems in society today. The one thing being that people don't have the attitude of Jesus Christ. God will take care of that, and I don't have to win every argument. God will take care of everything, and what I need to do is present Christian control. I control my words, therefore it does not lead to violent actions. We live in a society that is not necessarily more violent than it used to be, but you hear more about it now. The mass murders on various things, campuses, businesses, things like that, the terroristic acts, these things have gone on in the past. It's just that now you hear more about them. And obviously there's more people in the world, so some of those acts that are performed are done on more people at one time. Larger crowds, bigger congregations of people, and then you got bad incidents that happen. Exactly what is it that has caused all the hate down through the years? Exactly what's the root of it? First of all, they were not ready for the ultimate teachings of Jesus Christ, but now the world is ready. Back then they were told, you shall not kill. Jesus said, I want to get right down to the nub of it. You hate people. That's why you're hurting them. That's why you got some problems in your society. You've got to have control over yourself. You've got to have control over your speech. You've got to have love for your fellow man deep inside yourself. Listen to this, what John said in 1 John chapter 4, verse 20. If someone says, I love God, and you hate your brother, he's a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen, how can he love God whom he has not seen? That's impossible. You've got to ask yourself inside, what kind of a person am I? If you love people because you love God, then the people created in the image of God are not to be berated. They're not to be put down. You're supposed to do those things that are loving and right to them. Jesus said, you've got to look inside yourself. My friend, have you looked inside yourself to try to fix your relationships? How many people have had homes that broke up because of verbally abusive relationships? Oh, he never raised his hand against her. Well, he or she never did so-and-so to their children, but their children grew up messed up anyway. Why? Because they were verbally abusive. They never controlled the thoughts of their heart. They never had biblical temperance. They never understood Jesus' words that you've got to love them and ask yourself what is best for them. Inside yourself, my friend, you've got to have biblical control. You've got to have the control of Jesus in your heart. How can somebody say, I love God, and then you want to say that to them? Now, there's another side of the coin. One of the problems that people have, and the reason they get into arguments, is some people are way too sensitive. All right? Now, I don't know how much of this gets preached on. I don't hear much on it, but I know it's true. I call it off-insensitivity. The Bible does back me up on this. The Bible says, quit ye like men. It doesn't mean quit acting like a man. It means just the opposite. It means act like, perform yourself as an adult should, as a man would, as opposed to a boy. Now, how does an adult behave? Well, you're able to handle somebody else disagreeing with you. We are living in a world where disagreements on social items and on neighbor items, that person living beside me, I don't get along with them. Why? Well, you can't handle it that they don't agree with you. They don't have to agree with you. I'll give you a prime example. I expressed an opinion just recently. This was also done on the computer because I'm a nerd, and I was expressing my opinion on some things related to quantum computing. Don't ask why. Obviously, I was bored. Anyway, I had put in a message to somebody, and I had put my opinion about it on there. Well, somebody disagreed with me. And not only did they disagree, but they fussed and fussed at me like, you know, you're squashing other people's dreams of being able to do this and do that and the other. I'd made some kind of comment about some people watch too much Star Trek, you know, something like that. And they took it all personal, and they just worked me over. I don't know who they were. It's just somebody on a, you know, one of those little forum discussion things. And they just worked me over it. And I responded and I said, I didn't persecute anybody, because that's what was mentioned. I said, I didn't do anything to anybody. I expressed myself. If you disagree with that, my friend, that doesn't mean I'm going to hurt you or hunt you down. The guys that believe in what they're able to do with quantum computing are over there working for those California companies, making a whole lot more money than me, and I'm not persecuting them. They're just fine, aren't they? I'm not hurting them at all. I have an opinion, and I can disagree with them. But that don't mean you come after me and say, how dare you? You don't have a right to express your opinion. I most certainly can. Somebody can say, I wish Tim would express himself a little bit different or take a few voice classes. He has the most, grating habit of saying blah, blah, blah or something. That's your opinion. I should be able to take that in stride. It used to be that when I started out preaching that Connie would keep notes on all the mistakes I'd made. Now you all think that's funny. She did. She won't do it anymore. I would find that helpful. She won't do it anymore. I guess she figures he's a lost cause. But she used to. She would write all, Tim, you had so many of these, you said. You had so many of that. You didn't have subject-verb agreement over here. This verse, you meant to mention this one. You mentioned the other one. I still do that kind of thing. And all of that kind of stuff. Well, what that did is, if you've got the right attitude, we didn't break up. If you got the right attitude, you look at that and you say, man, I got some work to do. You begin looking inside yourself, don't you? That's where it starts, folks, in here. And you quit worrying about what the other person said or did. She meant that for my betterment. She didn't want to be embarrassed by Joe Hick getting up here and preaching what he was preaching, you know. She wanted me to do my homework. And therefore, I needed to clean some things up. If you look at what other people say with the right attitude, you won't be worried about being offended all the time. Life's too short. You can't go around offended at every little thing that somebody said or did. You've got to be able to take it like a man. That does not mean the other person doesn't love you because they're critical. Being critical sometimes can demonstrate the love. It's just like when the church practices church discipline. They do that because they love people, not for the other reason, not because you hate them. It says in Matthew chapter 15 and verse 18, those things which proceed out of the mouth, they come from the heart. They defile a man. Jesus, what comes out of a man's heart? Exactly what is it that you're getting at as far as where your life goes from the words you say. Jesus says, here's what comes out. Out of the heart proceed evil thoughts. The devil didn't make you dwell on doing something bad to somebody else or say something bad about them. Out of the evil heart, he points out, come murders. How did somebody get to where they would perform the ultimate evil act? Well, they would do that because they had planned it. They had let it foster inside them. They had had it build up inside them. They allowed that. Adulteries. Where did that come from? You see, it's the lust inside of a person. The desire for both control and the desire for the things that are fleshly and evil. Fornications. Thefts. I don't like it that somebody has something. I'm envious of them. Jesus says, there's your problem right there. Why do you care what that person's got? God has blessed them. God has blessed you in life too. Why can't you just live and let live and go on? See, they don't want to do it. Where does it come from? Inside here, I was envious. That's where that theft came from. False witness. Why did I tell that lie on that person? Well, because they have a better reputation than me, you see, and I don't like that. Blasphemies. Why did I say that against God? Because I'm angry that God took my loved one from me. I am angry that God did this and God did that and my life is not seen as a success. That is because you look at it as a failure. You change your perspective and you'll change your idea of God because He has only meant good for you, my friend. If you showed up here because somebody that loves you invited you to church and you want to do what at least is acceptable in society and you want to do them a favor and you showed up but you don't really love God, God wants you to understand. He's all about love. It's His very nature. God is love, and they that love are born of God, John said. If you want to understand the God that is in heaven, then understand this. Nothing has happened to you in life that God has meant for your ill, for your bad. God has meant it all for your good. He knew if there was something that you ought not to have, and you had it, it would just lead you down the road to ruin. Therefore, He didn't let you have it. He knew that if there was some person that you ought not to be with, then that kind of situation could have led to the ruination of your life or of your children. God knew if there was somebody or something that was going to stand in your way of true spiritual success and living forever with Him, then maybe I ought not to bless that person with that. And there's no reason you ought to hate God for that, because He doesn't hate you. He did it for your own good. What defiles a man? Jesus pointed out. It's not the outward things. It's what's coming out of the heart. That's verse 20 of Matthew 15. There's one other reference in Matthew I'd like to close with, and that's Matthew 25, beginning at verse 37. The God of love wants us to understand that everything you do that is good and right, it is something that from a heart of love will result in your blessings for eternal life in heaven. He hasn't forgotten a single cup of cold water. Certainly He will not forget anybody that you helped along the roadside. He's not going to help somebody that you counseled. He's not going to forget that. He's not going to forget something that you did to aid the church or volunteer your time. He's not going to forget that little child when you put a smile on their face. God is not going to forget every single daily act of kindness. The Lord remembers that. And He says that from a good heart, you can produce something opposite to the hate. The love that means you're a true child of Him. Matthew 25, beginning at verse 37. The righteous will answer Him, saying, Lord, when did we see you hungry and we feed you? When did we see you thirsty and give you drink? When did we see you a stranger and take you in, naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick, in prison, or come to you? The king will answer and say to them, assuredly I say to you, inasmuch as you did it to the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. It's for that reason that God is going to welcome people into heaven, because they have fixed what's inside here, and they wanted to let the love come out by doing good to their fellow man. God says on the day of judgment, there are blessings that are going to come to you that you could not even imagine. You won't believe all the things that God has planned for you, and you'll be like, God, Why would you shower me with such blessings? And God's going to say, every time you did something out of a good and loving heart, I saw it. It was just like my son would have done. And I appreciate that. And I will bless you now for it. He's not going to forget a single thing. He won't forget you being here desiring to worship Him this morning. He will not forget your desire to have a good relationship with your family, your neighbor, your fellow man, and for you to fix that so that you could worship Him truly in spirit and in truth. God is not going to forget that you have believed and obeyed the gospel. Oh, you may forget sometimes. You may feel down and have a hard time. The Lord will not forget that you stood up before others and made the good confession. Jesus Christ is the Son of God. God will not forget that you humbled yourself and were plunged beneath the waters of baptism, raised to walk in newness of life, a new creature in Him. The Lord does not forget His own, but He leaves the decision up to you. If you will be a true child of love, if you will be a servant of God, then you must cast off your worries and concerns about your relationships on this earth. Just simply be good to your fellow man and embrace the love of Jesus Christ and begin by having a right relationship with Him. Jesus loved you so much that He gave Himself for you there on the cross. He loves you still. And He invites you to come and believe and obey the gospel this morning. If anybody needs to submit unto the gospel obedience that God describes in His Word, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. We're ready. If anybody needs to come back to God and need the prayers of the church, we're ready. I know the angels in heaven are ready. And you can cast off all your concerns, all your anger. Leave your frustrations somewhere else. Let your heart be cleansed by Jesus Christ and come to Him as we stand and sing.